are incredibly fortunate to have Regina Starr Ridley here with us today, the publishing director of the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And I want to make sure, if you want to visit their website, ssireview.org. I was there today. It's a pretty cool website. SSIR has circulation today of 12,000 copies. And since Regina joined, the circulation has grown steadily. In fact, on the newsstands, they've more than tripled the circulation. So this issue that you're going to get a copy of, if you ask good questions today, has over 4,500 copies on the newsstand. I mean, that is incredible for this publication and for our sector. I mean, it really has become the preeminent publication on social change, and to know that it's reaching that many people, I think is incredible and bodes well for our future. Beyond SSIR, the magazine, the organization runs a very popular nonprofit management institute every year, and they put on all sorts of conferences. Most recently, there was one on driving dramatic school improvement that was incredible. I felt like I was back in school getting to learn from all of these incredible leaders about the different ways that they're turning around their education systems around the country. In addition, SSIR has just launched a live sort of pay-per-view webcasting service, and they had their first webcast maybe a month or two ago on an article that was in the last issue, Catalytic Philanthropy, a great article worth reading if you haven't seen it. It talks a lot about venture philanthropy, which is obviously near and dear to our hearts. And it was really neat to be sort of on a call that brought the article to life, and that the folks that wrote it and were involved in it were there on the phone telling you about it and answering questions. So keep an eye out for future SSIR webinars or webcasts. Not an issue of this magazine arrives that isn't packed with all sorts of interesting information that's very relevant to our work at SV2. And so as I was reading this issue last night, just in time, I was thinking about, what's just one example of that? And I was struck by this article on stakeholder engagement and just this little kind of piece of text here along the side that I want to read for you, because it's so aligned with SV2 that kind of makes you realize how important this publication is for our work. So, grant-making initiatives often fail when the foundation remains isolated from its grantees and the communities that they serve. To remedy this problem, grant makers must work more closely with their grantees, community leaders, and other important stakeholders. This engagement helps everyone involved gain a deeper understanding of the problems they're tackling, create new and better solutions, and build more effective organizations. And that's exactly what we're all about, right? So just one of probably 100 examples in this issue alone of the ways that this work can inform our work, and probably the ways that our work can inform this work. So with that, we are incredibly fortunate to have Regina here. She's going to talk for as long as she feels like talking. I'm guessing 15 to 30 minutes, and then just open it up for questions and discussion. And so I hope everyone will dive in with a question or a thought, because we're incredibly lucky to have Regina here with us on a Friday afternoon. And thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much
Not
for a
at all.
very nice introduction and kind words about our magazine. And I'm really happy that Jeannie's here because we are colleagues, and I fully expect her to jump in at any time with something incredibly insightful and enthusiastic.
No pressure, Gina.
But please let this be a discussion, so anytime you want to bring something up, go for it. So I spent a little time and reflected how I could add value, because I think that's really extraordinary of all of you to take time on a Friday to have lunch and talk about something important in this space of social innovation. So I looked at your website, and some things I read were that partners at SV2 contribute financial, intellectual, and human capital to help nonprofits grow and thrive, that you decide how to allocate your expertise and your funds, and that you ensure accountability by tracking results of investments through careful review of project milestones and outcomes. So I'm hoping that I can be useful to you, and I tried to focus my remarks on what could be useful. So I thought I'm going to start off to talk a little bit about my view into the world of social innovation, basically my perspective and where I'm coming from, topics that are hot with our readers, because those might be the areas that you want to be tracking and thinking about in your grant making. And a couple of potential ways you can use SSR or think about our content. Talk a little bit about the media in the social innovation marketplace, I would call it, like what we read, what websites we go to, what events we go to, because I know Gina says you're very focused on educating yourself and learning more about the field. So I thought that could be useful to you. And then I'd also really appreciate your advice and comments about what we, on the magazine and in the products we have, how we can better serve the marketplace and serve the needs of folks like you who are really, I think they're quite representative of our leadership. So that's my. So from my perspective, I joined the magazine in 2006. My career has been in media, run a division of magazines, conferences, websites for a large media company, primarily in technology for most of my career. So I've been in the for-profit side. This is my first job in the non-profit academic side. My experiences on the nonprofit side until then had mostly been as a volunteer in the schools. I'm also a certified doula, and I volunteered in that space. And also have founded a small nonprofit in Kenya to bring water to a rural school. And I'm board chair there. So it's kind of where I come from, but I really focus on Stanford Social Innovation and its products as a business, and in a way, I think that's where you have that sort of business angle in your community as well. So our perspectives may be a little bit similar. So I brought to the magazine managing to the bottom line, because that's where the magazine was at its stage in its 2003 launch. I got to learn a new nonprofit academic vocabulary. They don't talk about P&Ls, and which was a surprise, just given having looked at a for-profit. And when they say budget, they don't mean the bottom line; they mean the expense line. And you can't get a financial that has both your revenue and expenses on it. So anyway, so I took a little bit to figure all that out. Hopefully, I'm on track now. So SSIR. Our goal is to be the intellectual leader and preeminent forum for the dissemination, the discussion, the development of the most important new ideas and practices in social innovation. We talk a lot about how we need to bridge theory and practice, and you find articles from leading academics as well as leading practitioners. We also talk about the need for the sectors to work together for social change to happen. So you find we're always looking at an audience of foundations, nonprofit leaders, business leaders, government leaders, because it's working together to see social change. So I have, in a way, a dual role. You know, a lot of times people go, "What do you publish or what does director do?" Well, on the one hand, I have the financial management of the magazine and its new products, but on the other hand, I'm all about its mission, which is we want to get our content in the hands of more social change leaders. So increase the circulation, increase our website traffic, increase our conference attendees, develop new products like webinars, because people like to access content in different ways. So that's all what I do as well. So also look at all the revenue side, advertising, pay-per-view, for example, on our revenue, conference attendees, launch new projects, So given that's my position, that's kind of what I can offer you here today, a very broad view of social innovation, because I touch on many parts of it. My colleague Eric Mee manages the content of the magazine, so mine is in a really broader view than that. I'm not as expert as his in that area. So I think what may be of interest to you is what's hot in social innovation. Maybe like what kinds of things should you be looking at. So I thought kind of a fun way to do that would be to take a look at our top 10 articles of 2009. And I measured that, not a perfect measure, but I measured that by page views. So I'm going to pass out a list here of our top 10 articles as measured by page views. Look at that. is the last one you might be.
Nope. That's
Oops, wrong one. Sorry, wrong one. Good start.
You emailed out the top 10 too, right, to subscribers? Or a
Yeah.
top 5 or something? I
Yeah.
remember getting it and thinking, oh, that's really helpful. Because it can be hard to cut through all that.
So what I would like you to do is just take a minute and look through those, and rather than ask you to rank the top 10, why don't you rank what you think would be the top 5 most popular articles? Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And see how on the mark you are with our audience. Not giving it away yet.
So which 5 do you think won?
These are all the top 10. You're just asking for the top 5 of the 10.
Yeah.
Cream of the
I
cream.
even helped out by giving you a very short description of each one.
I might know some of these. Because I can, I would think that the nonprofit review probably
So our readers are 44% nonprofits, executives at nonprofits. 11% are at foundations. 23% are businesses or consulting firms. 10% are in academics. So hopefully that's helpful. About 11%. Well, think about number of foundations versus number of nonprofits. That's my only explanation. About 75% of the readers are managers. Of those, 38 are presidents, CEOs, or have C titles. 54% of our readers serve on boards. I'm always shocked. Something like 69% of readers have a graduate degree or other professional degree. So that's a brief profile. Okay, so I'll give you the 10 through 6, which although not among the top 5, I think we can still be very complimentary of. So number 10 was creating high impact nonprofits. Number 9 was social entrepreneurship, the case for definition. And what's remarkable, I think, that both of those were in the top 10 last year. They were both written in 2007. So they were very popular. And I'll go into them a little bit more after we go through the top 10. But number 8 was catalytic philanthropy, which was actually published at the end of 2009, so a little bit at a disadvantage. Then 7 was the new volunteer workforce, and 6 was design thinking for social innovation, which came out right at the end of the year, and it's actually going to be one of our most popular ones this year, I think. Correct. So moving to the top 5, number 5 was the profit in nonprofit, which is about 2 bucks. Number 4 was fundraising in tough times. Number 3 was social entrepreneurship revisited. Number 2 was the nonprofit starvation cycle. And you called it, Andrew. By far number 1 was 10 nonprofit funding models. Anybody else besides Andrew choose that one? Okay, you have access to these, but here
I have
you
one.
did. You want another one?
Sure, I'll give it to a partner.
What's Andrew's prize?
And I also have to tell you all, Andrew's our newest SB2 partner. So.
Wow. Was there another one over here? I can show you where the closet is.
I know where it is. Well, that's why I asked if it was, what the breakdown was, because with the nonprofits, that's gotta be Yeah. Whereas for funders, there may be other things.
Right, right.
It's also just a really good article. It does a really good job of breaking down and providing a framework that people may not have thought about. They kind of realize there's different ways of funding. They really have to do it. It all puts into place.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I'm always encouraging funders to try to put their feet in the shoes of the nonprofits too, and also will help encourage nonprofits to help, in this case, what kind of vocabulary to use. So I think it's telling the choosing of these 10 articles, and I'll tell you how I interpret it. I kind of broke it down into sort of 5 areas that I see our readers, nonprofit executives, foundation executives, really deeply interested in. And one is content about the field. So, and that's the ones the articles that are about the definition of social enterprise, of social entrepreneurship, of social innovation. Because, at first to me was like, does the definition really matter that much? Is what my first instinct on it. Let's just do it, But I think actually definition does matter, because that then helps funders, for example, make sure they're aligning their support with the entrepreneurs or the organizations that are going to be most successful with social change. So this first article, Social Entrepreneurship: The Case for Definition, by Roger Martin and Sally Osberg, was very much about narrowing or being more precise about the definition and the benefits of not having social entrepreneurship be a big tent, but to be more specific about what social entrepreneur is. And then we have followed up with the redesign, this one, with a big article by Jim Bills and Dale Miller from the Graduate School of Business, and Chris Steigelmeyer, who's the PhD of the Center for Social Innovation, about defining the field of social innovation and how important that definition is, because it brings in more sector perspective. And I'll just read that definition to you. What is social innovation? The novel solution to a social problem that is more effective, efficient, sustainable, or just than existing solutions, and for which the value accrues primarily to society as a whole rather than private individuals. And then we can look at the types of what are social innovations, and shoot some the author's list of writings and charter schools as one of their examples. And then that backed right into what was our third most popular article, Social Entrepreneurship Revisited, where Paul Light takes a look at the field. What is social entrepreneurship? And said he used to think big tent, but now he doesn't think so anymore. And except in the areas that, in a few areas which has to, he actually takes a mixed view of what social entrepreneurship is. So again, the people in the field are very interested in definitions, and we see this great popularity in these articles. Even sometimes I'm surprised at that. I don't know, any thoughts to you? Do you feel like we need a definition of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise?
I think part of the reason we struggle with definition is on the academic. Working academic. There's no faculty who are the faculty of their company. And so it's hard to get research and findings and that sort of thing that promote the field. So I think there's a tremendous amount of definition going on. So it's very multidisciplinary. It's cross-sector. It's a little behavioral. It's a little economic. It's a little this. And so I think part of the definition is trying to define it so that there are experts and research and real findings that move the field forward. In the absence of that, everyone sees that. Which I don't think it's necessarily bad. I just think there's discomfort at the academic and research side. And I think, particularly if you want to move forward, you have to find a way of measuring results, right, and success. And I think so I think part of that is how do we get a body of knowledge around social innovation, success, results, all that. move the field forward.
I mean, it seems like on the flip side too, for the practitioners versus the academics, there aren't because probably it doesn't exist in academia. There aren't those hubs or places to get that information, and so many nonprofits do feel like they're in silos, or feel like they're running a million miles a minute to keep the wheels on the bus or the wings on the airplane. That I think sometimes it can be refreshing for people in the sector to find that little Bible of, okay, well, this I can at least have this little piece of order, that will help me compare my work or define my work in a way that maybe they've never stopped as an organization, whether you're a board member or it's a nonprofit reader or a funder who's looking at their portfolio. You've never sort of paused to say, well, what name would you put on that if you had to? So
I remember years ago when Skoll started sending out the newsletter. There was a reader survey. You click on it, and the first question is, do you know what social information is? And if you click yes, then you have the next page take you to filling out, writing a paragraph about your definition. And I was like, oh, gee, Sally used this. To me, when I first started reading all this definitional stuff, I thought it was a lot of hot air, which I still think it is. But I think it serves the academics. Well, I would just contend it serves the academics more than it serves the practitioners. The practitioners want to see results, and they want to see information. Which is what the academics to do, and the researchers, and the statisticians, and people looking for results.
I would think two things though. If I were a nonprofit leader, I would want to align myself with the field with the definition of social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of interest in that, incredibly widespread interest. And then I think as a funder, I would want to look at those definitions and see what organizations are really successful and why. And some of it is like the leader of the organization, what kind of qualities does the leader have? So,
I can only relate from my standpoint to the literature, how, like, I like to get into the meaning of, what the story is, and then now I'm able to get the backbone, like look at the critical essays and say, oh, wow, there's a lot more, context and more, it starts to tie together, like, references to other fields and in this case, other authors, so more like the meaning, how it implications of this field and how it connects with other, so just to be able to be more effective.
sort of a framework.
Yeah.
And then just for fun, there's a great article in this issue kind of completing the definition about all social entrepreneurism is actually just entrepreneurism. So the saga continues. So that's sort of one hot area, I think, is and certainly you see a lot of social innovation, that term being used everywhere now. The Office of Social Innovation. It seems like every conference I'm going to this coming year is in social innovation. So people are working hard to figure it out. So I would group then hot topics. In the second area, I would look at sort of articles that address broad issues in nonprofits. In other words, ways nonprofits can work that will improve their success and impact. So this one, I don't know if you've had a chance to read this. Design thinking for social innovation was very much taking a business or product development approach and seeing if nonprofits could use that to more successfully create lasting social change. So that's a kind of topic I think nonprofit executives are really struggling with. What can we do dramatically different in the way we operate? Another example in our top 10 would be the Creating High Impact Nonprofits. That was by Heather and Leslie. That was from Forces for Good, that very popular book, which their research identified 12 very successful and impactful nonprofits and then tried to identify what were the qualities of those nonprofits. So I definitely see this search for how do you support nonprofits? How do you operate as a nonprofit to increase your chances at successful, lasting social change? So that's kind of the second area for this marketplace and our readers. The third, super popular always, is how do you funding and supporting nonprofit. And we talked a little bit about 10 nonprofit funding models as our most popular article. And then also the nonprofit starvation cycle. As we know, so many nonprofits are dealing with this big challenge about funders not supporting the operational side of the business, which is so important to a nonprofit success. We'll probably do a webinar on that as well soon. And
question?
Yeah.
Just a thought on the subject about how to improve impact. I remember reading something a while back about nonprofit organizations that evolve to be the most successful in the process. And that the traits that were noted were that they did both service operations and engaged in advocacy for their field. And then it said, most organizations will just start out in one area or the other. But if they should move forward to embrace the other functions, then that's a sign of true tremendous success. So why am I saying all this? I'm just curious as to what goes on in your magazine that addresses questions like that.
Well, we try to write about it a lot, or we try to not ourselves write about it, but identify like the best thinking in it. And of the articles that we've run on this side, a number of them come from some leading consulting companies. Bridgespan wrote through these articles, and they do a lot of work in that area, as well as FSG Social Impact Advisors. So we try to go out there and find the best information we can there. Also, we run a lot of case studies, and one aspect of the case study that we always look at is what their funding model is, how they make their funding model. What are your thoughts?
Harry, incidentally, if you want to be able to go back and find that point, it's one of the 12 in this bullet number 2, creating high impact nonprofits. That's one of the practices that they identified as the 12.
Yeah,
so that's probably where you read it, either in the magazine or in the book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're always looking for best practices in general, because our purpose is to share best practices with other organizations so they can adopt them if they're appropriate. So best practices in funding, but best practices wherever they occur. We have a section in the back of the magazine for sort of small case studies and ones with one big case study.
One more question about your concept. How much is it what you just described of you wanting to take topic for financial investment versus how much of it is to do with the product? I know you're not the concept side, okay, but I'm just wondering what the breakdown is.
I'm not sure exactly. I would say there's a real mix. We get a flood of people in the field suggesting that topics to cover. But our editors are, out there reading a lot, attending events. We're at a great location at Stanford to learn. So we very much try to select those that we our four main articles are written by either leading practitioners or leading academics. So that's often very much we go out there and select it because we learn about who's doing the most interesting work. So a real mix. Okay, so we talked about some sort of grouping our hot topics, and I think the fourth area that our readers are definitely interested in is more practical information. I think probably most on the nonprofit side. So that article, fundraising during tough times, is pretty practical. You know, when you look at your fundraising, you're doing all the things you can do to maximize your success. Or the new volunteer workforce. I mean, huge challenge for nonprofits with sort of a flood of people who are unemployed and looking for volunteer work to use, and Obama's administration emphasizing volunteers. How do you actually use volunteers successfully? Big challenge. So we also do provide, not like how to, but more practical information. And sort of the fifth category of our content, I would say, and we just talked about this, is case studies. The Kiva story was very popular, and we look for interesting case studies. We have a part at the back of the book that's called "What's Next," what works, and what didn't work. No surprise, what didn't work are the hardest stories to find. No one wants to share those.
The names have been changed to protect.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that the Kiva model is potentially a universal model for crowdfunding. And I was just wondering if anything is going on in your institute thinking about how to bring the Kiva concept to individual or collective nonprofits. It goes beyond just push the button.
Right.
But there's a lot of development trying to take advantage of that feedback crowdfunding. Not just around microfinance, but around savings accounts. Funding, crowdsourcing funding for people who want to establish savings accounts for and I imagine we'll see a wave of crowdfunding also. So I think I would say at university we see these kind of developments and work with students and faculty who are doing that. I don't have any research to say. But that aspect is that a lot of how else can I use the crowd to get rid of the middlemen.
And there are websites for funding for teachers who say, this is what I need in my school,
Exactly.
for my classroom, and you can donors choose, and some other things where you can actually go in and say, I search by this area or this area of interest, and I'll fund.
Yeah, I think donors choose actually was before feedback. And it was basically, instead of, having every teacher ask their students, parents, for their that there might be a better way to do it. So, that is a I know. Yeah, I know.
And a little more narrowly, we saw that we call them these online giving marketplaces that we're talking about now. We had a conference on this 18 months ago too, because we said it was really cutting edge.
Regina, were there outcomes from the online giving?
Well, there's a loose association of online giving marketplaces that were funded by Olivia for a number of years, I think, still. So the event was sort of associated with their group.
But I wonder if people could look online. Is there a record or go to Olivia?
There are podcasts from that event. If you go to we have a podcast channel called Social Influence SI Conversations, and many interesting Stanford talks are on and non-Stanford talks are on the podcast channel, but also many of our speakers at the Stanford Social Innovation Review events of our podcasts. So yes.
Including one about venture philanthropy and founding SB2 by Laura Arriaga Andrews.
So is there a sense of the reaction, kind of overall, because this to me is like preaching to the choir a little bit. Like, I mean, I know some pretty intelligent people who are pretty biased against, giving. And so how do you know, what is the reaction to this? Is there like any sense of the response, trends?
People interested in this kind of information.
Yeah. How's it being received?
Yeah.
More widely?
Well, it's an interesting question. Did you want to ask something? Because our business model is a paid circulation magazine, and so there's that. Oh, well, our total circulation is 12,000, of which most of it is paid. But as we know, there's a trend towards everything should be free online. So we're in that space. So it's hard to know what's. But one of my strategies to get this great content in more widespread hands is my newsstand strategy, because when you do direct mail, you go to very targeted lists. Like, for example, ones that have worked for us very well would be like Forward Source, which is an organization that supports people on public goods, or Chronicle Philanthropy readers, so they're very targeted, and you kind of know they're interested because those are usually where you get the best results. But where you, as a magazine, you can widen your reach is go to places that go where you're seen by more people than those, and the newsstand is a great place for that, and that's actually been really successful for us. So 4,500 copies this issue. So that's one way we kind of try to bring in outside. But I can't say we get a positive response, but to some extent, yeah, we do go after the choir.
And online there's blogs, so people do respond and comment, and that's it. So you can find that.
Yeah, no,
What about your email strategy?
You
I mean, it seems like you have this very robust strategy of keeping in touch with subscribers with an email and sending out the latest blogs. And what sort of reaction or web traffic are you getting from that strategy?
Sure. Well, our web traffic has gone up dramatically since we started on the web. I don't know, like 2005. Whatever. So, and I try to look at our customers as not just our subscribers, but people who come to our web, and same with our email newsletter, which it's subscribers, but also anybody who signs up for us, and that's gone from 0 to 25,000 in 3 years. So we're certainly seeing, our progress on our mission to get out there more.
We have over 1 million podcasts now.
Well, the content on the website.
No, it's we're following the New York Times model. They actually copied us because they're moving to a pay-per-view model, a
SSIR model.
A paid wall, which is kind of current thinking in media. So if you're a paid subscriber, you have access to all the content. If you're not a paid subscriber, you have access to about 20%. So that's our business strategy for that.
You might try to talk about the cover price.
Yeah, and it's $12.95 on the newsstand versus $39.95 to subscribe. Yeah. So
Well, and all sorts of subscribers get all sorts of great stuff. I mean, stuff comes in the mail that you'd never expect, and conference discounts. And
yes, and we now have a downloadable digital edition. So if you're at the airport and you forgot your print copy, you can quickly download the edition and read it on the plane, which I'm sure a lot of people do.
Before you comment on the stored content on the internet being free, a few organizations are real contest themselves for from paid model. I'm seeing a definite trend in one direction or the other.
Yeah, I mean, the trend, like right now, is towards paywalls. So you have to pay to see all the access. There was some talk about the whole micropayment idea as being hotter, which is where you would pay per article that you were interested in. That doesn't seem to be as hot right now in the space, but certainly, music downloads have proven in that arena that works. So
it's on some form of payment.
Yeah, well, the media companies certainly hope so. I think the jury's out a little bit. And many media companies, and I sort of consider ourselves a mini media company, you look for other ways to bring in revenue that leverage your content. It's really common for the magazine not to be the moneymaker, but for the conferences and or the webinars or other products to be the moneymakers to support the magazine. So you do, yes. Yes. So, but our bulk of our revenue on the magazine is subscribers. But yeah, we have advertising from all sorts of other conferences, products in the space, consulting companies, book publishers, so a real variety. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we do, and we have a big project going on right now on search engine optimization, because I feel like although our numbers have really increased, we have way more opportunity to be easily found in search engines. But yeah, it is tricky, and we've sort of discovered it's easier to get our content for free out there than we realized it would. Sort of changing some things on our behind the scenes on our website to make that more difficult. I mean, it's really important things to keep an eye on as a media company. Also, another important thing to keep an eye on are e-readers and mobile, people reading over mobile, and how you satisfy that need and how that's going to grow. Okay, so we kind of went through, I kind of grouped the areas that are really hot and popular among our readers, but another way I think for our magazine or our content to be useful to you, and part of our goal is to be critical of popular trends. If you're a reader, you may have noticed over the past few years a big controversy in our magazine on the field of microfinance. Because we had a article called in I think it was 2007 called Microfinance, and this is its mark. Because as we know, microfinance is like the solution to alleviating poverty around the world, right? But I know you guys dig a lot deeper than that. So in various topics, you might find a lot of interest, because we see our mission is like putting the argument out there, not like choosing what the right answer is. But and I just pulled the quote from that article, Microfinance Misses His Mark, and he's the author, Neil Kahan. He says, if societies are serious about helping the poorest of the poor, they should stop investing in microfinance and start supporting large labor-intensive industries. And that author has gone on to write for other articles for us. One's called Romanticizing the Poor, and he lists, popular beliefs about bottom of the pyramid, and that there are many of them are not true. So I just throwing that out to you. We hope we're a good resource for you to see if the popular trends will hold up.
This is the comment that I'm motivated. I've noticed, in my case, I've had fun with students. But then, when they started having stockouts, I got to think about, what's a better way? Well, an example might be, a better way is one called, Mercado Global. It is one that's actually very effectively working in Guatemala, supporting collectives of trash creators. It's a full-fledged business. I'm not trying to describe it here, but what I'm trying to say is, you look at that, and it has a track record of success. The families are doing so well that now they can put their kids in school, and the school is overwhelmed, so it needs money. So full stop. So I thought, well, now there is a place where there does seem to be collective aggregate impact. And I don't want to say any more.
Sounds like we should be writing about it.
Click for 25 on the Mercado Global.
Yeah.
Your favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good. Other controversial articles that sort of go after current thinking. We had an article called Endowment for a Rainy Day, which criticized that nonprofits have been working down their endowment to offset some of the losses of income during this economic crisis. Another one that was very controversial was called the hidden cost of cause marketing. I guess the other definition is consumption philanthropy, which I think is just great. So it's like, the idea is like when you buy your toaster, how is it bad if the manufacturer donates 1% to help stop cancer? Well, this author can tell you why that's bad, and that's actually, I thought, very intriguing.
The red cancer.
On Project Red.
Yeah, that was, that's, the man inspired, it's all the retailers, you see all the words with red at the end.
Yeah.
That's
Also
one of
like
the big
toasters, right?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And among other things, this author talks about how it's bad to individualize solutions and sort of replace virtual acts. You know, your thoughtful decision to support a cause versus mindless buying. So that was quite controversial from our cause marketing friends. I gotta say, we heard from them on that. And let's see. And then another one I wanted to throw out there. One was called Offsetting Green Guilt. Yeah, yeah. So the idea of carbon offsets. Do voluntary carbon offsets help counteract greenhouse gases, or are they a way for guilt-ridden consumers to buy their way out of bad feelings? So, anyway, those are a few examples of where we tried to challenge current thinking, and that we hope support folks like you. So,
When you have major disasters, have you done anything on what's effective and what's not in that kind of situation?
yes, and actually I think our next issue has an article precisely on that. But we also had an article, maybe you can recall it, that we passed around recently talking about aid now versus aid over time during disasters. Do you remember that?
It basically was saying that whenever there's a really like disaster, a lot of money comes in, and because it's so specified, it gets used, but it doesn't consider how long it actually takes to recover from it. So it was an argument for not just flooding all the money right now, but a way of institutionalizing it.
I think about the other sources as well. I suspect it's always involved there.
Yeah, yeah.
Money goes in and it's out of mind.
Well, it's interesting. We promoted that older article, maybe it's 2-3 years old, in a newsletter recently, and the headline, the provocative headline that we came to regret later, and it was like, "Don't give money to Haiti now." So I had a fun time responding to people who had suffered tragedy in Haiti and pretended violence. But all part of this business.
Got people thinking. Partners in health is busy telling us because they are taking money so far and deploying it over time.
Okay.
To build infrastructure for long.
So I think they're doing a good job communicating that.
So that's the point.
Yeah. That's really smart. So this sort of leads up to what are the resources out there in general for you? And I sort of quickly put together a list of what we read, what websites we go to, and what conferences we attend. And I'd love to hear what you do to stay ahead in your field.
You don't have a memorized?
Wait, thanks. Got one. Like, what did I really write yesterday? I have to say the websites come from our editor. Those are the ones he looks at, so I can't be too helpful on talking to you about those. But these conferences, I basically, for the most part, I go to all of these, or some of them after.
Yeah, I've had on-again, off-again subscriptions. I was honest that delivery is so sporadic. So I will get 2 issues together, like within 3 days of each other, and then nothing for a month and a half. And, and they want to know why I'm not real keen on spending $40 every 6 months.
Yeah.
It's because it's expensive, and I don't get it, and I can't even rely on this issue.
I'm guessing why that is has to do with the U.S. postal system, because if you can mail nonprofit rate, and I wonder, no, they're for profit. Because if you mail nonprofit rate, which is, for example, what we do, you get less good delivery.
But they're good. Yeah. But, I know this is supposed to be a lot of stuff, and they all get their I just think there's a problem somewhere in the model.
I get mine online, so I just
that's
delivered that way.
That's probably the smarter way to do it. Is to do it online.
So I would say there's relatively little in the field in terms of printed publications that are good resources. You have your general business magazines where you can occasionally find a good article. I think, Harvard Business Review is only a quarter in the field of social innovation, social change, something like that. Or you get your super targeted magazines, and none of them are cross-sector like ours is, where you delve in more deeply into segments, whether it's CSR or nonprofit. So, do you have any other publications, websites that you look at to educate yourself in the field? No, that's right. That should definitely be on the list. And she's a blogger of ours as well. Oh, no, I don't. Lucy,
You're gonna have like 100 best for you.
No, it's good. That's good.
Read a Dean's blog.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean's got up. I track things on Twitter, which is a little harder to do this way. Make for some interesting conversations. So the subject matter. It's sort of continuous.
Right.
There's no pause.
That's the benefit.
Yeah.
Yes, we're at the center pretty active on Twitter.
There's some issues with having So apparently their nonprofit philanthropy advice is supporting. Things to be positive.
Check it out.
Center for Effective Philanthropy.
Yes.
Yeah,
They have a conference every other year. It's very good.
and then Duke just launched their center.
Remember the business school. There's a bunch of business schools. They tend to be around place. The business school is really because of
Also, just for reference for everyone, Kim runs Stanford's new Center on Philanthropy and Civil Society. So hence, she knows a lot about the landscape. Gina's in the Center for Social Innovation with Regina, and Kim's in the Center for Philanthropy and Civil Society. So we have Stanford experts among them.
and we're all friends. Still talk. Information trade. That's exactly right. Center, Iris, the
So, there's one other conference, I went to the, oh yeah,
and they put on this. That's another one. They're just really interesting.
it's a good organization.
You know, I went, Jason Clark got me again. He's gone to, some place else and I haven't talked to that, so and it was on $5. Is this going to be the next great saving or is it?
Yeah.
It's an in-person conference, but it's a person who will be the client will be then. So I think it's I got the idea that they started something. And there's a lot of people here.
Definitely.
And there are lots of various conferences.
Twice a year. The bigger of the two is April and October, and the bigger of the two is in October. And we're all very fortunate that this year's conference is in Long Beach. So it's just a short plane flight away. But always a really interesting mix of keynotes and speakers, and then this chance to sort of talk to philanthropists from around the country about what's up.
So just sort of winding down here, the last part of this was like all about me. So it's like when you tell me what I can do better, in other words, what can we do better on the magazine? What suggestions do you have for us on ways we can offer our content, and broaden our reach? I'd love to, any questions you have, all that would be really helpful to me.
What percentage of the readership is Bay Area?
Oh, something like 20%. It's 92% domestic, 8%.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like there's gotta be a big Bay Area. I mean, I don't, 10 or 20% of 12,000, but there's gotta be a big opportunity, I would think, in the Bay Area, and that would feed into your business model when it comes to being able to draw people. I mean, webinars, you can draw people from anywhere, but in terms of drawing them to the many opportunities on campus.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I feel like our penetration is pretty good in the Bay Area, so maybe our opportunity is elsewhere. But yeah, it's good to actually look at it in both ways. We do see with our conferences, people come from all over the world. But yeah, it's like which way do you look at the Bay Area, right? But I think we have a bigger presence here for sure because it's much easier.
Sometimes I pick out the organization from the community side when they kind of subscribe.
So what's your social media strategy?
Sure. So there's a lot of talk in media like how the social how does Facebook and Twitter really benefit in terms of hardcore, like how do you get more subscribers from it? And the jury's certainly out on that. So our media strategy right now is reach and eventually try to turn that over into customer. But I don't think we've figured it out. Sort of like everybody else. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. How many fans do you have? LinkedIn.
They have their own blog and podcast.
Yes, that's what we're aiming for. But there's way more opportunity there. I think just haven't figured it out. Do you have any ideas?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I can you off of it. All right.
Yeah.
We've got offers and we've got we can actually push it to make it on the process. We move online as well. It's really looking at the overall strategy. So if it's something that you're active and share.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely feel like we're pushing as opposed to pulling. And that's something we can change. Because I always think of it, we're not really about dissemination, we're about community, building the community.
So then,
yeah.
I run my own consulting practice. I used to work with foundations in DC and worked with some foundations. Kind enough when I moved here.
We're connected by an SVP. That's what SVP.
Great. Any other thoughts from you?
What do you see is the big challenge for social media? What's the best topics?
Well, I feel like from my vantage point, everything happened around social entrepreneurship. So, and we certainly see that on campus wildly. So I don't know if that's you have a particular perspective, but I know I'm spending a lot of time working with students in that area.
Probably one of the hot topics that I see is the for-profit business, nonprofit structure, what's happening with the structure you pick, nonprofit or for-profit, even if you sort of start out, like, I don't know which I'm gonna do once you pick one, it's going to force you in the direction that you want it. So there's, sort of a lot going on the legal side of things. First on the legal side, to kind of come up with a better structure.
And a couple states have done some very
Right,
interesting
so there's usually an LPT model and that kind of thing there. But then taking that, then on the funding side, I guess, what I hear a lot about is there a research capital market? How do you fund these sort of not purely for profit, not purely nonprofit, and how is there a capital market that sort of sits in the middle that is able to balance the not really happening other than the social capital markets conference is so that's around the social entrepreneurs sort of
I think education is really a big emerging topic too. I mean, with what Obama's doing, and I think charter school movement is going to be very controversial over the next couple of years. And I think that's a little bit reflective of a lot of education content in this particular issue. But I would say that I also think another hot area is poverty alleviation. You know, I think Haiti certainly is going to spark that. Economic development issues is going to be hot.
and design picking up in interest or
I don't know that I don't know if I have an answer on that one. I mean, certainly that article was really popular. It's going to gain momentum. I better.
the idea of design for the other 90%, that 90% of design for products. And so there's not products being designed for the 90% of the rest of the world who have different needs that are products and services. So, market opportunities and business opportunities are nonprofit. Business school. Serve the bottom of the pyramid, not just in the nonprofit way, but
Yeah, and then you say that article on emphasizing the poor is a little bit of a counterpoint to some of that activity. But yeah, I would agree.
I kind of wonder, it's not the newest or sexiest thing, but I've wondered more and more if collaboration as a real topic will, I mean, even, from the article on catalytic philanthropy, which is all about sort of how to think beyond an organization and think about a sector or a problem, right? And work together. And of course, there have been a million attempts to get nonprofits to collaborate and a million attempts to get foundations to collaborate. And I don't even know with the hybrid models, what that looks like. And it might just be the next version of that, but it strikes me that the conversation about collaboration might continue as well.
You mean cross-sector collaboration?
Yeah, and just the need that sort of like nobody solved it, right? And nobody's solving it alone, and that I would think that we would start to see, as there are successful models around, hey, we came together and we were able to do this, that we might see some of those showcased.
Well, but there was an article in the last
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of our definition of social innovation.
So we'll see if that one continues as if it's just the next version or not, but.
James Lee of the Institute of Policy. Building a network, about networking, she calls it networking, but collaboration. I can forward you the link.
I would love it. Anyway, I think it'll be a trend. You can quote me.
Today with a group of students, how they've restructured their organization to actually provide philanthropy, if you will, and leadership, is they're doing it like if you're in Grand Rapids, you're working with everything, schools, healthcare, whatever, and you're not supposed to be the expert in any of it, but you're supposed to pull all the teams together, and so you're not going to report straight up line to your vice president of education within the foundation. You might have a different reporting structure in order to pull in more of the collaborative approach. So we're trying some new things around that. And anyway, we'll see how it all works. But a little bit more is called matrix management.
Well, and it's interesting to think about SV2 and more broadly partnerships like our role in that, because we're never going to be even the David to the Goliath of funders. You know, we're going to be like David's shoe or something, right? And so I don't know. I mean, we're by the dollars, we're not necessarily a big force in venture philanthropy. I think it's like 0.1% of all philanthropy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the impact represents 0.1%. And I think a lot of that will come from being a commuter and a connector and the collaboration. I was going to, last question, and then I was going to say we should wrap up, and people can probably come up and bombard Regina for a few more minutes with questions, and also let Holly take a First Friday photo.
Yeah. I'm just really interested in the nonprofit starvation cycle, that this was in your top 10, and I'm wondering if you see this as, I mean, that's what we're all about, right?
Right.
At SC2 is instead of investing in programs per se, we want to invest in the capacity of the organization, of the nonprofit, to help them, you know, so they can use their money for whatever they want. And so that's just really our love, and I'm wondering how much you see that as a growing topic. I mean, obviously it was a very popular article. Do you feel like there's going to be more traction on that? I mean, it's, you know, we've been into that for like for 12 years, and so it's so interesting that it's kind of becoming in vogue, and let's talk about it now.
I hope there's more traction in it, but I can't say that I know that.
What was the book that was written by the guy, Dan Pilata?
Right.
What was it called?
I don't remember.
And he wrote a whole book that came out last year that was pretty controversial. It's got a catchy name, Pilata. He did Pilata Teamworks, which did the AIDS Ride from San Francisco to LA, and he was all about, his whole thing was about not funding nonprofits properly, so that, you know, they operate on a shoestring, and how could that possibly be the best way they should operate?
Yeah, oh, here it is, uncharitable.
Uncharitable.
As an example of an advertiser.
I think, you know, maybe the focus, you know, of SV2 and of this article are slightly different. What we're really focusing on is scaling effective nonprofits so they can, you know, dramatically increase their impact. That sounds a little different from, you know, at least what I would think the starvation cycle would be about.
Well, I would say we're about scaling and building capacity.
I think they do forward the point is if you're going to scale, you have to make sure you have all the expertise in your organization, and that costs money to have the right systems and the right talent. So,
Certainly
yeah.
an overlap.
Yeah.
Well, Regina, thank you so much for being here and
You're
taking the time, and for an incredible dialogue. And thank you all for taking the time and being here to make the dialogue a good one.
Thank you. Thanks.